This week, kind of moving forward. Each week we do themes. We have a theme of the week, and obviously this one for our football team is moving forward. We did that last night. We put Saturday behind us. We went made our corrections, and there was a bunch of them, but made our corrections. And today it's all about moving forward and getting ready for the next one. And we've got a great opponent, SEMO, coming up. Things that they do present a lot of challenges, and some of the personnel that they have present a lot of challenges. Our kids are up for the task, so it'll be fun. And it'll be another battle. I mean, this conference is getting better and better each year. There's a lot of good football played in this conference, and each week you gotta put your hard hat on and bring your lunch pail, because it's going to be a job to earn a victory each week. And but we're up for the task and looking forward to going to SEMO this week.
Coach, is there anything that you saw that wasn't correctable, just going to be an ongoing issue for you?
No, not really. It's you can't coach the uncoachable, and turnovers. Turnovers are a weird thing because part of you feels like you need to emphasize it, getting better at it, and I don't know if you could emphasize it much more than we have this year, just because that's what plagued us last year. And then part of you says, well, maybe you don't say anything about it, and you just kind of reverse psychology the kids, and they don't think about it, and you don't do it anymore. And it's almost like a slump in baseball. Nobody knows how you get it, but when you get it, you try to wear the same underwear every day, and you try to not change your socks, or just do something to get you out of that slump. And I don't think we're to that point. I think it was just some unfortunate incidents the other night, and most everything that happened on the field were either dumb penalties, personal fouls and things like that, or the turnovers. So they're very easily correctable. The penalty at the end of the game, it's like I said Saturday night, that was my fault. So that was one that didn't need to be corrected, because we put KJ in a bad situation, or I put KJ in a bad situation. So feel really good after watching the tape. Feel really good about where we are as a football team, and what we need to do to move forward.
But given the stack of issues, you still, with a minute and a half to go, had a chance to come down, kick a field goal, and win the ball game.
It's funny you said that. That's what I told the team. I said, we played at times we played about as bad, meaning I think we had 4 offsides penalties, and things like that, and that's just that's unacceptable. That falls on us as coaches, and we had a long conversation about that. You can't do those types of things over and over and over again. We turned the ball over as many times as we did. We had 2 block kicks, a missed field goal, things of that nature. I mean, there were some things that went really, really wrong the other night, and then all of a sudden you turn around, and if we convert the 2-point conversion at the end of the game, it's a tie ball game. We're going into overtime again, with that crew. So, it's like I said, there were a lot of corrections that need to be made, a lot of things that are easily corrected, but at the same time, a lot of positives coming off of last week, moving into this next week.
Coach, how big is it getting DeMontre Wade back?
Huge
this week.
Huge. I and me and Coach Boone had a long talk about that yesterday. We knew with Sanford being out there, Black, we call him Black. He's a true freshman. I mean, kid's a true freshman. He's probably 158 pounds, and he did a tremendous job. But there were times where you could tell he was getting welcomed to college football a little bit, and we knew that going into the ball game. We knew that we were thin on the back end. That's probably our thinnest spot. Because you got Sean Samuels out there, but he's probably 80% with his hamstring, so it's not like he's running around that great. And there's a lot of moving parts. You take a kid like Toby Omley, he's playing 2 and 3 positions, doing very well at all of them. But it's like anybody, you can't be. It's hard to be very good at everything. You know what I mean? When you take a kid like that, it's hard for him to be spectacular at 3 different positions. So now when you add Wade back into the mix, and you add Greg Willard, we're hoping that Greg Willard can at least take a series or something like that, and just see how that leg and that knee is doing. When you add those guys back into the mix and you add depth, you're taking some stresses off of some other guys, So, like I said, I told the staff this Sunday, I said, maybe we're hitting our stride. Maybe it's a week too late, but maybe we're hitting our stride. We're getting Tony Mays is back offensively. Blackburn's back now, which he played last week, but he's back now. You got Marcus Holliday back offensively. You got Greg Willard back defensively. Possibly DeMontre Wade. I won't say he's out of the shed yet. He tested again this morning, and he still did not test out from his concussion testing. So tomorrow we'll do it again and see how he does tomorrow. But I think he's going to be okay. But if we can get him back, then obviously it's just creating depth, and it's taking some reps off some other guys.
SEMO's going to be really hungry, and they've got a rookie quarterback in Van Devin. What do you know about them, and how are you preparing for this Saturday, knowing that they just lost to a D2 team?
Well, the thing about it is if you would have told me the Division II team that they lost to, Shorter, they run a version of the option. They're a triple option team. It's very hard to defend. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors and people going different ways. So I don't think that that's very indicative of the type of football program that they have. I watched them play Missouri. SEMO played Missouri on TV, and I watched the whole game. I think that was our first week when we played on a Thursday, and they gave Missouri all they wanted. Now, if you were a Missouri fan, that game was like watching paint dry because there was no excitement whatsoever, no big plays, no anything. They held them in check, so I know that they're a good football team, and that's what makes this week a little bit more tricky. Is do they come back after a loss last week, like we're planning on doing, where they're going to come out of the gates and they're going to be, blowing snot bubbles and all of that kind of stuff because they're ready to play again because we just lost the way we lost, they just lost the way they lost. So it ought to be a lot of fun. It makes for a very good week of football, I assure you that, and a very good game. And our guys are looking forward to it. So, I don't take anything away from SEMO as a football program just because of the loss they had last week, because I've seen them play a couple of times now.
What's the biggest challenge that SEMO poses for you?
Well, I think defensively they do one thing particular, and I'm not going to say it out loud because I may give them a hand to them a little bit. But they do one thing particular that makes your run game very tough. With what you're going to do, it can take you out of some of your run game, just schematically what you want to do because it's just going to get plugged up. They do a good job of getting everything out to the edges. You can't get downhill on them, and you can't run straight ahead. They do a very good job of plugging it up and then bouncing everything, spilling everything to the outside players. And then offensively, they're big. Now, SEMO, when they walk out on the field, they're a big, good-looking football team, and they can overpower you at the line of scrimmage if you're not careful. If your guys aren't gap sound and playing with leverage, they can overpower you. That was one thing about them at Missouri. They're especially on the defensive front. Their D-line, they gave Missouri's offensive line fits. If you look at that game, I don't know how many sacks they had, but, they got to Matty Mock. Matter of fact, they made Missouri take Matty Mock out of the game because they were putting some hits on him and so on and so forth. So I think just from a talent level, they're going to be one of the most talented football teams that we play, just size-wise, length, the way that they run. They got somebody on a kid, big, tall, lanky, number 57 on defense. That guy, he can run like the wind. So I think that's the biggest thing that they pose is just from a talent level. To me, I think they're very above average when it comes to talent.
Coach, despite 4 fumbles, the offense seemed to be clicking. Is this one of those things where you guys will be able to attack the running game a little bit better on Saturday?
I hope so. Coach Steele and Coach Dawkins, they've the past 24 hours have been nothing but talking about run game and how we can do, how we can get it going. And but it's just, it's when you got a quarterback back there that's doing fairly well right now, and he's pretty comfortable, and you got some guys out wide that can make some people miss. Then obviously you're going to go with the strengths of your football team, but. With that being said, I do get Marcus Holliday back there in the backfield this week, and I plan on giving him some touches. You got a guy, Nick Taylor. Nick Taylor's very explosive with the ball in his hand, and then you got Roman Clay back there who's just very solid. He's just a very solid football player. So we've got to get something it's like we always talk about defensively. Our plan on defense is to always make people one-dimensional. And I don't want to do that from an offensive standpoint. I don't want us to become one-dimensional where everybody knows, hey, they're just going to throw it all over the yard and they can't run it on you. So, we're always looking for ways to run it. But with that being said, it's all just football math. It comes down to where they're going to put their numbers. If they're going to stack the box and they're not going to let you run it, we're not going to run it. We're not going to beat our head against the wall. If they're going to spread out and say, hey, you're not going to throw it down the field, then we've got to find a way to run it. And that's what, y'all asked what problems they pose. That's the biggest problem they pose, is because of certain things they do with their front, they can make it very tough. Even though you're seeing 5 in the box, they can make it very tough to run because they're going to spill it to their set, 6th and 7th and 8th players out wide. So we've got to find a way to get downhill on them and to run the football a little bit.
We saw some talented receivers in the back-to-back bowl division games, and I remember saying I didn't think we would see anyone to that caliber. I forgot about Paul McRoberts. He's, NFL scouts love him.
Yeah.
You're going to have to know where he is, aren't you?
Yeah, most every scout that comes by and sees us, we ask them, where have you been? And they usually say, I just came from there to see him. And he's one that he poses a little bit of an issue for you, because if you want to double him, or at least give some safety help over the top, where you're taking that away from a run fit, or you're taking that away from somebody else. You're leaving somebody else on an island. And it's like I just said, if you don't get DeMontre Wade back, well, now all of a sudden you've got a true freshman that he may be that one that you're putting on an island, or he may be one that you're trying to help give, a little bit of safety help over the top. And it may just take away from, what you're doing with the other 10 guys. So, and it's like that anytime you face a guy like that, you're going to have to do something, or you're just hoping that, your talent's just as good as they are and you can lock him up man to man. But I don't think very many people can do that with a player like that. And I don't think we're in a position to do that with a player like that. So, Chris is going to have to be a little dynamic in his defensive calls to figure out different ways to disguise some help or just give some help, and not put everybody else in a bind.
They're looking at some film today, too, though, about Elijah Daniel. You can bet that they're having to game plan around him a little bit.
I hope so. It was good to see him come up on film like we thought that he would. I think that was the first game that he was able to get loose, cut loose, go make some plays. I think that our defensive staff has done a tremendous job of not handcuffing him to a certain extent and giving him every once in a while, giving him plays where, as funny as it sounds, just letting him go play ball, and one of those things where he's probably supposed to be in A gap, but he may not get to A gap, but you're just hoping he wreaks havoc in some gap, and they've got some calls to allow him to do that, and that stuff poses problems for offense. A lot of times offensively you say, well, they can't do that defensively because that's not schematically sound, and it winds up hurting you because it's not schematically sound. You're not used to blocking it that way, but I'm hoping that continues, because he does, him and Demetrius Mason there in the middle, they do pose some problems for a lot of offensive lines, just because they're going to have to help with those guys. You're going to have to find some ways to double those guys, and even if their stats don't continue, maybe that opens up Zach Dean on the edge, or Bishop Woods on the edge, and allows them to make some plays, or maybe it allows some of those linebackers to make some plays because they're taking up double teams. So it was good to finally see Elijah have the game that we knew that he could and thought that he would.